The Kings, barring some miracle, are going to be in the play-in. The Mavs are on a tear and will most likely hold the tiebreaker over the Kings. The Pelicans have fallen back to the sixth seed. They obviously hold the tiebreaker over the Kings. It's not even close, and they are 1.5 games ahead of the Kings. So the Kings would obviously have to jump the Suns as well if they want the sixth seed. Sacramento does play the Suns and the Pelicans in the final week of the season. Winning both of those would be huge, especially that Suns game, because that would give us the tiebreaker over them. But the likelihood of us jumping those two teams is not great. The Kings have 8 games remaining. Suns and Pels have 7 games remaining. I'm not including the Mavs, who are 2 games ahead of the Kings, because the Kings would basically have to win out to jump over them. But as far as the Pelicans are concerned, since they hold the sixth seed, that's as far as I'll allow myself to dream. But let's say the Pelicans go 3-4 to end the year. They've also lost their last 2 games, so that'd actually be 3-6 to end the year, which would be crazy, borderline unbelievable. But let's just play along here for a sec. If the Pelicans go 3-4, the Kings would have to go 6-2 to jump them and take the sixth seed. And here's each team's schedule. Obviously, you can never say, oh, that's an automatic win, but let's just assume the Pels beat the Spurs and the Blazers. That only gives them one more win. They are 0-2 against the Suns, and they lost to the Magic a couple weeks ago. They're 1-1 against the Warriors and 1-2 against the Lakers. So, I mean, it is possible, I guess, but also that would be an absolute collapse, especially since they were the 4 seed like a week or two ago. And then, in this scenario, obviously the Kings would have to beat the Pelicans, which they haven't done all year. They're 0-4 against the Pelicans, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And, all that's fine. I mean, it's borderline silly, but it's fine. The real issue is that the Kings would have to get 6 wins in this absolute gauntlet of a schedule. The fourth hardest schedule, in fact, in the league. Suns have the hardest, by the way. But 6 wins, man. Obviously, anything can happen, but dude, I mean, without Monk and Herter, the rest of this season is going to be tough. Obviously, getting Trey and Sasha back is big, gives us a boost in the shooting department, and also gives us a little more size. But man, losing Monk took the wind out of my sails, to say the least. I'm still going to watch every Kings game. I'm still rooting for my guys. But man, I mean, Monk is the heart and soul of this team. And thinking about how I might have already watched Monk in a Kings jersey for the last time, it's tough. Honestly, I can't even let myself go there. We got too much season left. And as a fan, what good does it do to think about the worst case scenarios? It's out of our control. But obviously, every fan in Sacramento wants to see this guy in a Kings jersey until he's 50. Real quick, I want to show y'all this tweet from Will Z Stats. Great page, by the way. Go check him out. But yeah, I mean, this kind of just puts into context how important Monk is to this team. I mean, there's no Beam team without him. But Malik is out for 4 to 6 weeks. I'll get back to him. But there's some more important stuff I need to go over. Not important like it's more important than Monk. I just mean there's additional important stuff to talk about. You get it. It is very important that the Kings make it out of the play-in and into the playoffs. Their pick would convey to Atlanta and would allow the Kings to include future draft picks and potential trade packages this summer. It also just sucked to waste this incredible season Domas is having, but especially considering that every single motherfucker who still hasn't given Domas his flowers this year is holding out to see what he does in the playoffs. And so, if this team doesn't even make the playoffs, the disrespect is going to reach new levels. And I don't know if I can take that for an entire year. Even though this team would be well below 500 without him. But I think every Kings fan has heard enough about how little respect Domas gets. Obviously, we know that he should be all NBA. He's one of the absolute best centers in the entire league, one of the best players just in general in the entire league. He's doing stuff that nobody's seen since Wilt Chamberlain. So anytime you're in the conversation with that guy, I don't know. It's just crazy that like nobody's even really talking about it. Obviously, he got a little love when he passed Kevin Love, no pun intended, in the double double streak since the merger. But like I mean that was for a day, and then we move on to still talking about the Lakers and Warriors, which they've won championships and stuff, so I get it. But it'd be nice if Sabonis was a little more respected around the league. And up until all these injuries, I was really thinking like, oh, the team's just going to use that as motivation. It's obviously been motivating Domas. I feel like you can see it on his face every game, especially those games where he's not getting any calls, which I mean is a lot of games. But I don't know. I just like the reality that we might get bounced even before the playoffs start just really pains me because Domas specifically, I mean the whole Kings team, the Fox especially too, have put in so much work this year, and to just like let it slip away because injuries are, I mean, a lot of inconsistency. I'll get to that later too. It's just gonna suck if that's really what happens. But you know, I think right now the sixth seed is obviously kind of the best case scenario, but in all likelihood, will be the seven or eight seed. Falling to nine would be a disaster. Winning two games against some combination of the Lakers, Warriors, or Suns, let alone just trying to get one win against those media darlings, it's going to suck. The Kings have obviously played pretty well against those three teams this year, but I mean, if you were the NBA, who would you rather have? Curry, LeBron, KD, or Sabonis and Fox? But obviously, getting the seven seed would give the Kings the best chance because they'd host both games if necessary. But even if we do get out of the play in, our prize is most likely either OKC or Denver. I mean, it'll definitely be either OKC, Denver, or Minnesota. The Kings will be underdogs in any one of those series. But I think Denver is like clearly the one that you want to try to avoid if you can. And obviously, even if we got the sixth seed, which, pretty much since the All Star break was, in my opinion, the ideal scenario because we'd most likely avoid Denver for the longest possible time. But even as the sixth seed, there was a chance we'd see OKC in Denver. But every team in the West is tough. Every team poses different challenges and problems for the Kings. I will say on the flip side though, like the Kings would definitely scare some teams too. Obviously not as much as if they had Monk. Monk, who, as I'm sure most of you know, is out 4 to 6 weeks, and he almost certainly won't be back unless the Kings make it past the first round of the playoffs, which is going to be really hard without Monk. Once Monk went down, there's kind of a lot of doom and gloom around the Kings, and I mean I felt that too, and I was a victim of that as well. It was really hard for me to like think anything positive regarding the Kings, but I've given myself a few days to kind of take a step back a bit and like consider where this team was even 2 years ago and where this team is now. And even with Monk out, like we still have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. But overall, I think it's important to keep in mind that this is still only year two of this Kings team. This is the second year of Mike Brown's system. This is the second full year of Domas and Fox, and this is Keegan Murray's second year. I know everyone wanted us to progress in a linear way. We're like last year we took the defending champs to 7 games in the first round. So this year we make it out of the first round, and then next year we make it past the second round, and by year four we're in the finals. But that's just not how it works most of the time. The Nuggets, for example, who you can make a lot of similarities between the Nuggets a few years ago and the Kings right now. But the Nuggets didn't even make the playoffs until Jokic's fourth year in the league, and that was Jamal Murray's third year. Now they did make it past the first round in that first trip to the playoffs, and the next year they made it to the conference finals. But then the following year they got swept in the semis, and the year after that they got bounced in the first round. Now obviously they dealt with a lot of injuries in the playoffs, but the Kings have had to deal with their fair share of injuries as well. Mainly this year, but even like last year in the playoffs, obviously Domas was playing through that broken thumb, and then Fox broke his index finger. I don't want to like compare, the severity of injuries between the two teams, but like you get what I'm saying. And like obviously, injuries are just part of the game. Every team has to deal with that. And if you look over the course of history, I mean, injuries have played a major part in teams winning the finals and teams not even making it that far. Like think about like the McGrady Yao Ming Rockets, two of the most talented players of that era, and they didn't make it out of the second round. So anyway, that's not really my point. My point remains: if we don't make it past the first round this year, this season is not a failure. The West is really good, and that's an understatement. I think we got to remind ourselves too that it takes time to recover from being such an awful franchise for so long. Things aren't just going to change overnight or even over the course of 2 years. Now, if we don't make it out of the play-in, then yeah, this season was a borderline disaster, mainly because we lose the ability to include draft picks and potential trades this summer. But, knowing Monty, who even knows if we'd make any like significant trades anyway. But with the way the rest of the West has improved, mainly the Thunder and Wolves, even the Pelicans too, I think it's imperative that we make some moves this offseason, or else we very well might get left behind. And by moves, I don't mean, JaVale McGee type of moves. I'm talking like go get an upgrade for our starting five type of move. And re-sign Monk, please. But just because I think we need to improve the roster doesn't mean I don't think our roster improved this year, because I really do think it did. Fox and Sabonis each improved upon their All NBA years last year. Keegan Murray has developed into a legitimate, up and coming two-way star. Malik Monk has improved in almost every facet of his game, and he should, even with the injury, still win the Sixth Man of the Year award. Keon Ellis has all of a sudden become a starting level option for this team. Davion Mitchell has really worked on his shot, which has really opened up his playmaking ability and his ability to blow by defenders and get to the rack. And obviously, his on ball defense is still top tier. Barnes and Herter definitely declined a bit, but I don't think they're the reason we're the 8th seed. The reason we're the 8th seed is because we have some absolutely terrible losses to the worst teams in the league. And on top of that, we have some pretty atrocious losses where we couldn't close out games against some pretty good teams. Take away those losses, and we're getting home court advantage in the first round once again. Obviously, every team, every fan base is probably like look back on their losses and be like, oh, well, if you get rid of these, we're, in the 1 seed too. But I mean, come on, like, I don't know if you guys watched my last video. I went through kind of every Western Conference playoff team's worst losses. The Kings definitely had the most, especially if you take into account like us losing to the Embiid-less 76ers or the Halliburton-less Pacers. The list goes on. I mean, there's so many losses that you wish you could have back. But the point is, we've been inconsistent all year. But with that said, I do think that's something that we can improve upon and clean up come next year. And that's not me saying I'm giving up on this year, because I'm definitely not. I think while, Trey and Sasha definitely don't make up for the loss of Herter and Monk, that definitely gives us a bit of a jolt at a time where we desperately needed one. I really need to see how we play in these final 8 games before I start predicting how this team will do in the playoffs. I think this team has pretty much shown us who they are, and that's a team who can compete on any given night, but they can also get punked on any given night. But I don't see a world where this team just gives up. That's not in their blood, and it's not in our blood as Kings fans to give up either. This team still has a long way to go, and I think they still have a lot of fight left in them. But we just got to take it one game at a time. Let's get a win tonight against the Kawhi-less Clippers and head out east for a fucking brutal back-to-back against the Knicks and Celtics. Let's get it, baby. We're playing meaningful basketball in April. As a Kings fan, man, you got to take that as a win. We've been through too much to not enjoy this. Go Kings. Let's light the beam.